Hello, my friend.
Good morning, my friends. How are you?
We are well. We don't have morning or evenings.
I know. It's my perspective.
Yes, we appreciate that.
Do you come in the love and the light of the one infinite creator?
We do, as do you.
As do I. Yes, thank you for asking.
Yes, it's always good to clarify such things.
Yes.
We just wanted to share a couple things regarding Gaia that your scientists have not fully realized or have misconstrued. We have noticed within your populace that many people are alarmed by what they call global warming.
Yes.
And very many people, rightfully so, are very proactive in trying to prevent further global warming.
Yes.
However, what the populace does not understand, given the duration of Gaia and how many years she has been in existence, this is a normal phenomenon. Your planet gets warm and then it gets cold.
Yes.
And it's a cycle. It's about every 26,000 years that it goes around the sun. And this is a normal phenomenon.
Okay.
It's been accelerated by your carbon dioxide emissions from your structures that build things
Right.
and put stuff in the atmosphere as a result. However, if you look at the fossil records, particularly in the polar caps, which are mostly frozen, and your scientists have discovered this, that if they dig down deep enough, they will find fossils of ferns, plants,
Right.
flowers, bugs. So this is to to demonstrate the viability of Gaia and the cyclical nature of the planet. So the level of alarm that your populace is demonstrating, yes, it is accelerating the heating of the planet, getting warmer. Picture like an oven getting hot a little bit more than it's supposed to, but this is a normal phenomenon. And the alarm that the populace is taking on in trying to slow this down, we find tremendous that there are that many within your populace that have the awareness to recognize this acceleration. However, it's being somewhat ignored by your scientists that this is a normal cycle of the planet. So the heating and the cooling and the heating and the cooling, that's what the planet does.
Right.
That's how the oceans regenerate themselves. And a lot of the ocean regeneration is dependent upon these cyclical changes within the atmosphere. So this is a very important process that Gaia goes through, is being accelerated due to your emissions, as we just stated. But that is just a normal part of the process that's been going on since Gaia was created.
Right.
And so we just wanted to reiterate that because, as we had mentioned prior to, the amount of plastics going into your oceans are very detrimental. But the heating and the cooling of the oceans and the atmosphere, it's normal. It's a normal cycle. And that's what helps perpetuate the evolution of species. Because without that, species would not evolve. And so we think that those in your populace, we are grateful that they are conscious of Gaia and her well-being, but tend to be maybe a little overzealous in slowing this down. But this is just a normal cycle that occurs. It's just being accelerated by your pollutants, particularly the country with the red with the yellow stars. China. Yes. They're not very polite to Gaia.
Right.
but they're in their own evolutionary cycle, as is people on the bikes, India.
Yes.
Yes, they are in a different phase of development as well. So their concern for Gaia is not as high as your more developed countries that have the green square dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes a factor as well.
Right.
But our main, just we will keep this brief today. Our main
Concern?
information
Okay.
is that the heating and the cooling of the planet is very normal, and the populace tends to overreact to these changes that occur. But the people that drill down into the ice, they have those cores.
The geologists that drilled into the
They come out
the
with,
ice.
they come out with this core.
Right.
They can see all the geological changes that have occurred
Right.
within these regions. And so, but they don't get much attention because the film media, they tend to focus more on the negative. Your media tends to be service to self, very much so.
Okay.
Which
Interesting.
is why people watching that box kind of get sucked in and get sucked into that fear. But besides from that, this is a normal cycle that Gaia goes through.
I understand also that the entire solar system has cycled into a segment of the galaxy that is conducive to warming, to triggering this cycle. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as the galaxy loops around and around, and there's multiple sun systems.
Right, and there are elements within the galaxy that trigger these cycles also, do they not?
Yes. Yes. Your planet is not unique to these evolutionary cycles.
Right.
They're all interdependent upon one another. They all influence one another.
Right.
And so the design is that each galaxy and or planet, your planets are relatively close together from our perspective.
Right.
So they tend to influence one another, kind of push each other for their own evolution.
Right. They interact.
Of course, they
Yeah,
interact.
they interact, and through that interaction, they learn.
Yes, they learn.
Yeah.
It's almost like just different animals interacting with one another that don't.
People interact with each other, and it's through that interaction, and we've discussed this. It's how they learn, and galaxies are just we call. I think for clarification, it's my understanding that when you think of a galaxy, we would call that a solar system.
Yes.
And what we call a galaxy, which is the much larger organism that includes your 9-star system and our 9-star system and all of that, just the geographic appearance of it, we call a galaxy. Is that a clarification that you would agree with? Is that correct?
Yes, that
Okay.
is correct.
All right. So when I'm referring to a galaxy, I'm talking about the big organism that is inclusive of all of the 9-star systems that geographically appear in close proximity.
Yeah, and your 9-star system is relatively small and compact compared to all the other galaxies and star systems around. It's almost like your star system is within a bubble, and that's due to the level of consciousness of those that are inhabitant upon that system. And so it makes interaction between multiple systems limited because of this self-imposed bubble. It's almost self-imposed upon each individual because they are so, we picture like a Ziploc bag, the plastic bag with a thing at the top.
Right.
That they're like in their own little world and unable to communicate with the outside.
Okay.
Beyond.
And just for clarification, are you speaking of what we perceive to be a person, or are you still talking about the 9-star system?
An individual person.
Okay. Well, that is reflective or indicative of the degree of free will intoxication, is it not?
It is.
The more significant the perception of autonomy, the lower the perception, or lower the evolutionary advancement.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Just to comment and inquire further on your comments about Gaia and the climate change. The level of consciousness that Earth's population currently experiences is characterized by a resistance to change.
Yes.
And I think part of that resistance to change, would you agree that that is the primary motivator behind the fear of the changes in the climate, the warming?
Yes, a resistance to change, resistance to doing things differently.
Mm-hmm.
It is very pervasive
Mm-hmm.
within your populace.
Mm-hmm. But that's that stimulus for change that provides us the opportunity for the learning that we need to advance.
Yes, and Gaia, as we have stated prior to in our conversations, has been instrumental in pushing
Mm-hmm.
people to change those views.
Mm-hmm.
However, what's keeping that down
Mm-hmm.
is fear.
Right.
People's fear of change, people's fear of looking around,
Awareness.
Mm-hmm. and seeing that things are not working as well as they should,
Mm-hmm.
and that things could be better. However, that requires a lot of effort,
Mm-hmm.
energy,
Right.
the dollar investment.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, from our perspective, we see that the dollar control being held by a very few number of individuals
Mm-hmm. Right.
that want to restrict that advancement, because then that they don't have that
Power.
pocket and power.
Yeah.
And so it's this conflict
Sure.
where it's an unawareness of the populace to recognize these changes that need to be made. And then it's also being pressured by those that control the dollars
Mm-hmm.
that can make it happen.
Right.
So those that control the dollars that can make it happen are very reluctant, because then that jeopardizes their stability,
Mm-hmm.
and their mind, their own stability. So it's quite a dichotomy that your populace is going to have to resolve itself.
Right. Well, as you well know, one of the primary objectives of third density is what we have called the choice, the decision to polarize service to self or service to others. And that is a significant point of contention where we are in our evolutionary development. When I say we, the population of Earth in its evolutionary development. And as we've talked before, a significant portion of the population has not even elevated their awareness adequately to be able to make that choice.
That's correct.
And so there's a significant portion of the population that remains in chaos and vacillates between the choice of service to self or service to others, and consequently their lack of awareness makes them subject to the influences of those polarized service to self.
This is true. This is true. The more stuff, availability of things, distractions, as we have spoken about before,
Mm-hmm.
tend to derail
Mm-hmm.
that decision-making process,
Yeah.
which serves service to self, because then they can generate more energy
Mm-hmm.
from the vacillation of the population being unable to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you, and this is the interesting part of your populace, is that those individuals that live in small tribes,
Mm-hmm.
like in Africa,
Right.
where they don't, from your standpoint, from a monetary and or housing standpoint, clothing standpoint, they don't have much.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy.
Right.
They are the most happy people on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
because they look out for one another.
Mm-hmm.
They care for one another. They interact with one another on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
They cook for one another.
Mm-hmm.
They don't exclude anybody based upon how much money they don't make money, but based upon their monetary endeavors, that they don't make those determinants insofar as who they want to interact with, which is why, from an evolutionary standpoint, spiritually, they are far more advanced
Right.
than the people in your larger cities with the big buildings and the big fancy clothes with the label.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
But those individuals get overlooked, get laughed at by your populace, but they are, from an evolutionary standpoint, very advanced.
Right.
Because they don't value monetary type things. They value their relationships with one another. They cook together, they sleep together, they eat together, they walk around together, and they're not distracted.
Right.
They're not distracted by the box with the pictures and the thing in the car with the music. So from an evolutionary spiritual standpoint, they are far more advanced. But they're just not recognized.
Right.
And that's unfortunate.
Well, to comment and ask your response, the only thing that is preserved after an incarnation are the lessons that we've learned about the 5 inherent characteristics of the Creator: the awareness, love, wisdom, unity, and stillness. And none of the accoutrements that are comfort elements of our incarnate existence have value after and none of the information about jobs, skills, or whatever are preserved after we die, after we leave this incarnation. Is that correct?
That's correct. The only thing that is preserved from those experiences is your learning and compassion and interaction with another incarnate person. And so that's what's preserved.
Right.
It is your learning, compassion, agreement, awareness.
Well, the awareness is, as we've talked before, is the foundation for our evolutionary advancement. And as we escalate our awareness, then we become aware of these other attributes that we inherently have, but have not yet energized or activated. But when you talk about compassion and when you talk about sympathy and eventually empathy, then those are the learning tools of love, are they not?
They are. It's like a path, like a guided path, but you have to choose to be on that path. And that's incumbent upon each individual. Nobody can just throw you on the path. We picture the yellow brick road.
Oh, yes, yes, the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, where they're skipping down the road. We see that in her head. Yeah, that's cute.
Yes.
But it's a choice, and nobody can force you down it. It's incumbent upon you to have the awareness, to want to seek it out, and to pursue it.
Right, but the awareness is the awareness of self. We're all motivated to get more of what we like. And so it's a matter of learning what we like. So as we become aware and we become sympathetic for others' suffering, and we become compassionate for others' suffering, those are actually teaching us, those feelings are teaching us about what love actually is. And it feels better to be compassionate, to be sympathetic, to be empathetic, than it does to be isolated in our perceptions of autonomy. Is that correct? Would you agree with that?
Yes, we would agree with that. However, what hinders the majority of your populace from pursuing something as altruistic as that is a fear.
Right.
A fear because in order to go outside yourself, you have to have the awareness to look inside yourself and determine that this is what you want.
Right.
But until the individual resolves the fear inside themselves, it creates a barrier before that individual can pursue such a thing. But they have to have the awareness, as you just spoke of, in order to move forward with that. And as we had said, all these distractions create a lot of problems.
Right.
And so another thing that we'll just touch upon that helps the populace go that route is illness. Illness, yes, it is a blockage of energy, but it also serves a great purpose as
The catalyst.
as a catalyst. And as difficult as it is for people to deal with illness, it makes them stop. It makes them stop. We picture a hamster wheel.
Right.
We've used this analogy in the past. It makes them stop. And then they have no choice but to be still and quiet.
Right.
And so all these other distractions of going to an eating place with the chairs in a restaurant and the music live where you go and you listen to music outside with a bunch of people and a gathering with a bunch of people, constant, we'll use her words, yak, 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 yak.
Stimulus, constant stimulus.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of that goes away. So this is why people do not recognize, we wouldn't say necessarily the benefits, but the side effect of being ill. Because it forces you to be still. And many within your populace are unable to be still.
Well, they've never been still, so they don't know what it feels like.
No. So Gaia, the bacteria, and the viruses, which are very pretty, by the way, they provide a tremendous gift
Opportunity.
to those that need that. We picture a brake pedal, a pause,
Right.
a stop, like a stop sign. She pictures a stop sign to just stop and just breathe and just be. And that's scary.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that is scary.
That is scary for many in your populace, that they are unable to just breathe and be still.
Most, I think everyone, is my observation, and please add your thoughts. Everyone has awareness, but awareness is directional. And while we remain unconscious, our awareness is directed outside of ourselves in order to try to manipulate the world around us to conform to our belief system or our identity. And it's only when we're able to become aware of awareness and redirect that awareness inside are we able to do what you are prescribing is necessary to evolve.
Yes, the awareness, the design is for the awareness to be directed inside, to become aware of whom you are, where you are in this world, and who you are interacting with. When awareness gets directed outside by the individual, your expectation is that your perception of awareness that you direct onto others should be reflected back to you.
Right.
And that's completely erroneous.
Yeah, well, that behavior is trying to trick the world into giving them what you need or what you want. It's deception.
It is
self-deception.
It is self-deception. But the other problem that comes along with that when individuals direct that awareness onto another individual is that it projects a heavy energy on that individual with the expectation that you're going to get something from that individual that they may or may not be able to give. And so this guilt, anger cycle begins to create.
Yeah, all of that can just be described as stress because it creates stress for the individual that is unaware.
Yes, and it also creates a tremendous amount of stress for the individual that it's being projected onto because from their perspective, they don't understand or may not understand what the dynamic is that is perpetuating this behavior.
Right.
And so it just becomes this vicious
cycle. Yeah.
Tornado.
Tornado, yeah. Well, the individual that it is projected upon has to agree to accept that. So if their awareness is escalated and they've surrendered a large portion of their erroneous false identity, then it's unlikely that they're going to accept that projection.
Yes. Yes, this is true. And so if an individual who has enough awareness to recognize that this is being projected upon them and they decline it, they're protected.
Right.
They don't absorb that negative energy. But then it creates a conflict between the individual who is throwing it at them, who is expecting a response, and who needs that energy.
Right, but therein is the opportunity for learning by the projector of that situation. Okay, so it again is another opportunity to evolve, to become aware and progress.
Yes, it's just unfortunate that many within your populace, and it's not just within your own country.
No, it's worldwide.
The shape, yes.
Yeah.
Worldwide, that dynamic is very pervasive. However, as we stated earlier, in your what you would consider primitive cultures, there is far less of that.
Right.
Far less of that.
Yeah.
And it's which is why they are so harmonious, sharing, giving, caring for one another, regardless of age, whether they live in a little tent type thing. But they are far more harmonious because they don't have all these distractions and they're not trying to get ahead.
Right.
So there's no competition.
Yeah. We have an academic discipline called anthropology, and anthropology studies, for the most part, the history of man's social development, and they, as a whole, do not understand that what they're observing is really the various consciousness levels that have evolved within the subgroups within the population. And it's been my observation that the three characteristics that they have documented but not really put into a proper characterization is how women are treated within a subgroup, the degree of hostility or bellicosity that is demonstrated within the group, and the bellicosity that's demonstrated against other tribes. And it's my perspective that those three are primary elements that are indicative of the degree of advancement of the tribe or the subgroup. Would you concur?
Yes, this is true. This is true. Women within your populace have been very pushed down.
Oppressed. Yeah.
Oppressed. However, the male portion of the population that participates in that, they recognize the tremendous value that women have.
As they advance, they do.
Right. They're just not willing to admit it.
Yeah.
Or agree to it.
Well, they fear losing their power.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very much a male-dominant trait. However, you will see, as you have seen in your country called India, the women are not agreeable to this type of posture.
Right.
So they are changing things.
Good. Okay. Well, it's going to be the women that change the world.
Yeah. India, southern Horn of Africa, the eastern portion of Africa as well.
Okay.
So a lot of these female groups that have been oppressed, they have gotten to a point where they have nothing to lose.
Right.
They have everything to gain.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot of conflict. But it's going to be the younger ones, as we have stated before,
Right.
that are going to change things because they're witnessing what is going on. And they're going to be the ones that are going to grow up and make the changes. And the boys and the girls in these populations that oppress women are going to start recognizing one another and realizing how detrimental that is to their populace and their development.
Well, again, asking your comment, it's my observation that the female, less physically strong than the male, is actually teaching the male, when the male oppresses her, by giving the male a signal to become more sympathetic and compassionate and employ the tools of learning of love. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The populace cannot perpetuate without the female, obviously.
Right.
And so that's a threat to males in any society. And so throughout the thousands of years, the male has recognized that and tries to suppress the female energy in order to maintain their own energy. But that is rapidly changing.
Yeah. And the energy that you're referring to is what has been called intelligent energy, and that is what the service to self seeks to extract from the populace.
Yes.
And that the reason is they need that in order to sustain themselves, because they have chosen to divorce themselves from aligning with the universe.
Yes, they have chosen to become their own entity with the belief that they can extract a tremendous amount of energy in order to sustain themselves. But over the millennia, they are discovering that this is not the case. So they try numerous efforts to try to extract energy from different parts of your world, not just your world, but multiple other universes.
Right.
But there are certain portals, as we have discussed before and that you're aware of, that they tend to come in through, and then you see a huge influx of chaos within those particular regions. And it's a cycle. It almost happens over and over and over, like particularly in the place with all the sand.
With all the fans?
Sands.
Sands, yes.
Sands.
The Middle East?
Yes,
We just call that area the Middle East.
The Middle East, yes, that place. And also in the South America, as we have spoken about, the country with the oil.
Venezuela?
Yes, Venezuelans, yes. That's a big portal as well.
Okay. Well, we had talked about India and Russia as also being a primary portal. In China,
Yes.
primary portal.
Russia more so than China.
Yeah.
Yes, the populace of Russia is suffering tremendously. Has been for decades.
Yeah.
Because of this region. Okay.
Well, these are areas I would like to pursue with you, but I think our channel is becoming fatigued.
Yes, she's tired.
So in another session we can continue, my friends. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.